What movies are going to be nominated at next year's Oscars? Hi, I'm Brian Rowe. This is the awards contender, and with the big fall festivals just days away, I thought it was time to give you my very early Oscar predictions. The way this video is going to work is that I'm going to categorize all the movies I'm talking about by release date, like what's already come out, what's opening at the big fall festivals, and what's coming out at the very end of the year, like November, December. Then after I've talked about all the films, at the end of the video, I'll give you my very early Oscar predictions for Best Actor, Best Actress, and Best Picture. Let's start by talking about what films have already come out. It's kind of crazy to think we're almost to the end of August, the year is about 8 months over, and there's really only a select few films that have already opened in theaters that are major Oscar contenders. I would say at this point, there's only 3 or 4. The big one, of course, is Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer was always going to do well next year. I mean, just based on the trailers, it looked really great. But then it became this massive blockbuster hit. The reviews were through the roof. Everybody loves this film. And so now, going into the fall movie season, I do believe Oppenheimer is the movie to beat. Christopher Nolan is very overdue. This feels like the right time for him. This feels like the movie that will finally bring him an Academy Award. I don't know if that'll just be an adapted screenplay. Potentially he'll get it for director. And I do think Oppenheimer, as of now, has a very strong chance of winning Best Picture. I mean, if there is not a movie released between now and the end of December that enough people can kind of rally around, make it the favorite, the consensus choice, I do think Oppenheimer might stay strong enough all the way into 2024 to win it all, potentially even Best Actor for Cillian Murphy. And then there's Barbie, which has been overperforming in every way. A few months ago, I was like, well, maybe it can get into some technical categories. Now that the movie has made all that money, more than $1 billion at the worldwide box office, the reviews were much better than I think any of us could have expected. And the actors are great. It's such a fun movie. I do think Barbie is going to do very well at next year's Oscars. I think it's pretty much a lock at this point for Best Picture, Best Supporting Actor for Ryan Gosling, and Best Screenplay. I don't know if it's going to be adapted or original, but Barbie is going to be a part of the night. It's very much up in the air right now how many Oscar nominations it will receive. It might just be 3 or 4. It might be between like 7 and 10. It depends on how much Academy members really go for it. I'm kind of thinking it'll be somewhere in the middle. I'm thinking like 5 or 6 nominations, maybe 7. I don't know if it's going to get like 10 or 11 nominations. That would be surprising to me. But it is going to get into Best Picture. The other big Oscar contender that's already come out is Past Lives, my favorite film of 2023. I am sticking by that. I don't think I will see anything in the fall I will love as much as Past Lives, written and directed by Celine Song. This movie is so special to me, and even though it didn't take the box office by storm, it kind of came and went. Everybody who did see the movie really loved it. I know critics are going to get behind this movie big time in the weeks leading up to award season, so I'm not worried. I don't think this movie is going to be like forgotten come January, February. It will get in. I do think Past Lives is pretty much a lock for Best Picture, Best Actress, and Best Original Screenplay. Outside of those 3 categories, I don't really know. It might just show up in a few, but it would fill me with so much sadness if for some reason Past Lives was ignored come Oscar nominations morning. I don't think that happens. I think there's enough passion, enough enthusiasm, enough people really love this movie the way I do. It's gonna get in, at least at the nomination level. And then there's also Air and Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. I do think Spider-Man is going to be the movie to beat in Best Animated Feature. I don't know if it gets into any other of the Oscar categories, like Adapted Screenplay. And then the big question is Air. How well is Air going to do? It might be ignored. It might not get any Oscar nominations. I really loved it watching that movie a few months ago. I think it's going to play very well at home, like for your consideration screeners, and it's got a fantastic, engaging cast. I do think Air will do better than we're expecting. I don't think it gets like 5, 6, 7 nominations, but I could see it getting into screenplay, maybe supporting actress for Viola Davis. I even think Air has an outside chance of getting into Best Picture. I mean, if enough people discover the movie at the very end of the year, it has a chance. It would not surprise me on Oscar nominations morning if Air shows up in Best Picture. All right, that takes us to the second category, which are the films that premiered at Cannes last May. Which of those films do I think are going to get into the Oscars? Obviously, the big one is Killers of the Flower Moon from Martin Scorsese. I think that's going to be one of the 2 or 3 big Oscar contenders going into award season. Now, like The Irishman before it, I don't know how many Oscars Killers of the Flower Moon can win, but I think it's one of those that'll get 9, 10, 11 nominations all across the board. Picture, director, actor. I don't know if Lily Gladstone is going lead actress or supporting actress. I've heard conflicting things, but she'll probably get in. Robert De Niro for Best Supporting Actor. It'll get into screenplay, probably cinematography, production design. Like, I could see Killers of the Flower Moon getting at least 8 Oscar nominations. I believe The Irishman got 10, and it didn't win anything. I'm hoping Killers of the Flower Moon can win something. I'm very excited to see it. It's coming out in October, and I am counting the days. Any Martin Scorsese film is an event at this point, and I can't wait to see what he came up with this time. There's May December, starring Natalie Portman and Julianne Moore, from director Todd Haynes. Another anticipated film I cannot wait to see. I love all 3 of those people, and early reviews were strong. Some people said it's not the most serious movie ever made, that it has some humor in it, that it's a little bit twisted. I don't know if it's going to be the Academy's cup of tea based on a few reviews I read back in May, but I don't think you can ignore a cast like that, a director like that one. May December is going to play a role at least in the acting categories, I'm pretty sure, and I cannot wait to see that one. Those are 2 of my favorite actresses, like, working together in one film. I am going to be a very happy man on the day that comes to town. I can't wait to see that one. There's Anatomy of a Fall. That film won the Palme d'Or, and so we have to take it seriously. I think it's going to do very well. I'm hearing it might screen at Telluride, which I'm going to in a few days, and if it's playing at Telluride, I'm going to watch it and review it for you. Triangle of Sadness won the Palme d'Or last year and got into Best Picture, Best Director, Best Screenplay. I think Anatomy of a Fall is probably going to get into Best Picture, maybe Best Director, probably Best Actress. It's going to be a big player. And The Zone of Interest, which I don't know much about other than I've read some reviews, I've read some pieces that say it was their favorite film that played at Cannes. I'm just hearing really strong praise for that movie, and I'm curious to learn more about it. All right, the third category is the Venice Film Festival, which is coming up here very shortly. What films premiering at Venice do I think are going to be Oscar contenders? Now, sight unseen, there are 5 or 6 titles premiering there I'm feeling pretty good about. That'll probably get at least a few Oscar nominations. The first one is Maestro, which just premiered its teaser trailer a few days ago. It did get some controversy about the look of Bradley Cooper's character, but I think that's going to blow over in the weeks to come. If the movie is really excellent, I mean, I think people can look past that. And I think based on the teaser, Maestro is going to do very well. And Maestro looks like a very Oscar-friendly movie, like a biopic, directed by an actor. Carey Mulligan is the female lead. Like, based on that teaser, I think Maestro is going to do well. I would be shocked if the movie wasn't up to par and it was like ignored at the Oscars. I don't think that's going to happen. Bradley Cooper could get into Best Actor and Best Director. What about The Killer, directed by David Fincher? You have to take seriously any new David Fincher movie. Now, some of his films haven't done very well at the Oscars. I'm thinking about Gone Girl, which only got into Best Actress for Rosamund Pike. I mean, that film didn't even get into adapted screenplay for Gillian Flynn. That was crazy to me. I still cannot believe that Flynn did not get a screenplay nomination for that movie. Now, Mank did very well a few years ago, got into Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor. I don't know a whole lot about The Killer. It looks kind of like a genre film. I don't know if it's going to be very Oscar friendly, but you have Michael Fassbender in the lead role. You have David Fincher behind the camera. So I wouldn't count that film out. If it's really, really good, even if it has some genre elements, I think The Killer can make it in too. How excited are you for Poor Things? Poor Things is definitely in my top 5 most anticipated films of the fall. I mean, you have Emma Stone, Willem Dafoe, Mark Ruffalo. It's directed by Yorgos Lanthimos, who made The Favorite, so he's reuniting with Emma Stone. And based on the teaser that came out a few weeks ago, this movie looks rad. It looks really weird and twisted and gorgeous. And I don't know if it'll play like A Shape of Water and do very well at the Oscars. It might be too weird and only get into like a couple technical categories. We'll have to wait and see. But Poor Things really looks like something. I am crossing my fingers. It's a great movie, and we'll get into the Oscars. Ferrari is also making its way to Venice. Adam Driver, director Michael Mann. I have a feeling Ferrari is not going to be a big Oscar player. It might be one of those that gets respectable reviews and maybe gets into some of the precursor ceremonies, but doesn't make it into the Oscars, at least in the top 8 categories. That's the sense I'm getting with Ferrari. I mean, Michael Mann has only had one movie that really overperformed at the Oscars, and that was The Insider almost 25 years ago. Michael Mann, his work has not really been acknowledged that much by the Academy, so I don't know if Ferrari is going to go all the way and get a bunch of Oscar nominations. Obviously, the film could premiere at Venice and get just amazing reviews and become a big frontrunner. That could happen, but I'm not feeling it right now. I don't think Ferrari is going to do very well at the award ceremonies. It might be this year's, like, House of Gucci. Like, we think it's going to get into Best Picture, Best Actress, a bunch of these top categories, and then comes up with almost nothing. Ferrari might be that movie. Another film to watch is Memory, mainly because it stars Jessica Chastain, recent Academy Award winner Jessica Chastain. I mean, The Eyes of Tammy Faye got into the Oscars, but then The Good Nurse from last year didn't. Will Memory be The Eyes of Tammy Faye, or will it be The Good Nurse? I mean, that generic title doesn't help. It might be one of those movies that comes and goes, maybe doesn't even get a theatrical release come the end of the year. But because it's Jessica Chastain, we have to keep it in the mix. And then finally, there's Priscilla, directed by Sofia Coppola. I have a feeling unless the movie is extraordinary, it's not going to be a big Oscar player, given that Elvis just came out and got all those Oscar nominations earlier this year. It might be like a Capote Infamous situation, you know? Like the way Capote did very well at the Oscars, and then Infamous comes out a year later, kind of about the same subject matter, and gets completely ignored, even though I think Infamous is a very good film. Priscilla might be the new example of that, although I am thrilled to see it. I love Sofia Coppola's work. She hasn't had a movie do well at the Oscars in a while. I mean, I feel like Lost in Translation has been her only awards hit. Like Marie Antoinette did okay, and then ever since like 06, many of her films have gotten good reviews, but they don't really go very far in award season. And I do feel like Priscilla isn't going to fare well unless, as I said, it's just amazing and we can't ignore it. All right, now the fourth category is the Telluride Film Festival. Have I told you before I'm going to Telluride? Like, I'm actually going. This is a festival I've wanted to go to since I was in high school, and there's just always been an excuse. You know, it's too expensive, it's too far, I can't make it Labor Day weekend, I've got something going on. About a year ago, I said, I'm not gonna make any more excuses. I'm going. Like, I'm going to Telluride. It's the 50th anniversary. As of this recording, I'm 2 weeks away from getting on a plane and going to the Telluride Film Festival. Getting on a plane, by the way, that departs at 5:30 a.m. That's going to be a day, but it's going to be such an amazing event. I can't wait. And the thing with Telluride that's interesting is that they don't release the schedule until a few days before it starts. I believe the schedule doesn't come out until that Wednesday, August 30th. So the day before I leave is when I'll finally learn what's officially screening at Telluride, but thankfully we do have some clues already as to what films are going to premiere there based on the Toronto schedule. You can tell by what's like a world premiere and what's a North American premiere. So again, it's not official, but there are a few films that collectively we've decided are going to Telluride first. And there are some big titles, starting with The Holdovers, directed by Alexander Payne and starring Paul Giamatti, reuniting the two for the first time since Sideways, one of my favorite films. So obviously one of the go-to screenings at Telluride will be The Holdovers. I was charmed by its trailer, which came out recently. I believe that played before Oppenheimer. And I'm a sucker for films set in the academic world. I think it's going to be really something. Most of Payne's films connect deeply with Academy members. The only one that didn't in recent years is Downsizing, but Nebraska, The Descendants, Sideways, of course, About Schmidt. Like, his movies do very well at the Oscars. I think having Paul Giamatti back in the lead role is a masterstroke. Based on the trailer, he looks like he's perfect for this character. And unless the movie sucks, like if it's, the movie just sucks, then there's nothing we can do. As long as it's a strong piece of cinema, I do think The Holdovers has a good chance of getting into Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor. I still think one of the craziest Oscar snubs in acting of the last 20 years is Paul Giamatti for Sideways. So maybe Academy members will be able to rectify that by nominating him for The Holdovers. We shall see. Apparently Saltburn from Emerald Fennell, who made Promising Young Woman, is premiering at Telluride. Oh my gosh, Saltburn. This film looks totally up my alley, like a modern day talented Mr. Ripley. The cast, the look of just those pictures that have come out. This movie looks like it's going to be something special. Again, kind of like I talked about with The Killer, I don't know how Oscar-friendly Saltburn is going to be. It might be too much of a genre film. It might not be a movie that gets into more than one or two Oscar categories. But because Promising Young Woman did well, it won Emerald Fennell the Best Original Screenplay Oscar. We have to keep an eye on Saltburn. It might be even more so than The Holdovers, my number one most anticipated film at Telluride. I cannot wait. Oh my gosh. And I just made Annette Bening and the Elusive Oscar video, so I'm excited for Nyad. Could Nyad bring Annette Bening her first Academy Award win? It's still too early to say, but based on the subject matter, based on that first still image that came out, like, I'm feeling pretty good that she gets nominated for Best Actress. As long as the movie is strong, which I think it's going to be, like, Annette Bening for Best Actress. Come on. Let's make it happen. Let's do this. Another film that's apparently premiering at Telluride is Rustin, about the gay civil rights activist Bayard Rustin, who organized the 1963 March on Washington. Coleman Domingo plays the title role. This feels like an Oscar movie about an important figure in history that I feel like not enough people know about. I'm excited to learn more about this man. Dustin Lance Black co-wrote the script. Coleman Domingo feels like he could be a very big Oscar contender for Best Actor. Rustin is going right at the top of my list. And finally, Wildcat, directed by Ethan Hawke, starring Laura Linney. Like, Ethan Hawke behind the camera, Laura Linney in front of the camera. Sign me up. Like, where do I have to go? What theater do I go to at Telluride to watch this movie? Like, it's not a given it's going to be a big awards-friendly movie. I did see an early screening in Los Angeles many years ago of another film Ethan Hawke directed called The Hottest State from 2006. Remember that one? Probably not. So it's possible this one might come and go. But Laura Linney, another person I want to make an Elusive Oscar video about someday because I love her work. Her 3 Oscar nominations are fantastic, and she's never won. And it's been a long time since her 3rd Oscar nomination for The Savages back in 2008. Like, it's been 15 years. I would love to see Laura Linney get a 4th Oscar nomination. I will hopefully get a chance to see this film at Telluride and get back to you. Remember, any major film I'm seeing at Telluride in those 2 weeks or so after I get back, I am going to upload a lot of reviews of the films I saw at the festival. So get ready in early September for lots of early reviews of movies that haven't come out yet, but that I got to see at Telluride. Alright, that takes us to the Toronto Film Festival, which starts just a little bit after Venice and Telluride, and Toronto has a lot of titles I'm not so sure about. There's not one film premiering at Toronto that I'm like, oh, well, obviously that's going to get into Best Picture, Best Director at the Oscars. Like, there's a lot of films with big talent, with great actors, amazing directors, but we don't really know anything yet. It is difficult to predict Oscar nominations just based on, like, who's in the movie. But I'm gonna do my best. So let's start with Lee, which tells the story of famous photographer Elizabeth Lee Miller, a fashion model who became an acclaimed war correspondent during World War II. This film is obviously included in the video. It's the one I'm jump-starting the Toronto category with because of Kate Winslet. I know it's been a hot minute since her last Oscar nomination. It is insane to me that she's only received 1 Oscar nomination since The Reader. She was nominated in the Best Supporting Actress category for Steve Jobs in 2016, but that's it. Like, it's been a while. And Lee, based on the still image that's been released, based on its subject matter, it feels like an Oscar movie. Now, Winslet has had films premiere at the Toronto Film Festival that went nowhere. Remember The Dressmaker from a few years ago? The Dressmaker came and went. But fingers crossed, Kate Winslet gets back into the Best Actress race for Lee. North Star is a film I've read up on a little bit. I feel like Scarlett Johansson might be in the conversation. She is working with director Kristen Scott Thomas, who she collaborated with as actors way back in the 90s in The Horse Whisperer. Kristen Scott Thomas, like Scarlett Johansson, is an Oscar nominee, and she is an actress too in North Star. Let's keep an eye on that one, and especially the Johansson performance. Knox Goes Away, weird title, but some amazing talent involved. Michael Keaton is the director, and it stars James Marsden, Michael Keaton, Al Pacino. IMDb says it's a thriller, so I don't know if that's going to play very well in award season, but Michael Keaton has been a part of some big Oscar movies like Birdman, like Spotlight, and I feel like he's someone we're going to pay attention to when he's behind the camera, a premiere at Toronto. I don't think if it's a thriller, it could get into more than like 1 or 2 categories, but no matter what happens, I'm curious to see how he does as director. Taika Waititi has a new film premiering at Toronto, Next Goal Wins. It stars Michael Fassbender. Because Waititi did well a few years ago at the Oscars with Jojo Rabbit, like his next movie could do well too. Next Goal Wins is based on a true story. It might be one of those uplifting films that gets into the Oscars. We shall see. There is a new drama called The Burial, starring Tommy Lee Jones and Jamie Foxx, 2 Oscar winners. It's a film based on a true story. I don't know much about it, but The Burial, if it's really good, could also factor in at the Oscars. Finally, at Toronto, Dumb Money. Dumb Money, is this going to be a player? Is this going to be a film that just like opens in late September, October, and then quickly fades? I made my Paul Dano and the Elusive Oscar video earlier this year when he did not get a nomination for The Fabelmans, which surprised me. If Dumb Money is really, really, really good, like maybe Paul Dano has a shot this time around at an Oscar nomination in Best Supporting Actor, we shall see. All right, and the final category is all about the films coming out at the end of the year in wide release, movies that aren't necessarily going to screen at any of the major film festivals, but are coming out before the end of 2023 that I think are going to be big Oscar players. Obviously, number one is The Color Purple, the upcoming musical adaptation from producers Oprah Winfrey, Steven Spielberg, Quincy Jones. 1985's The Color Purple got 11 Oscar nominations, didn't win a single one. I feel like as long as The Color Purple is decent, like as long as it's like at least a 7 out of 10, it's gonna get a buttload of Oscar nominations. I could see it getting into Best Picture, Best Actress, probably Best Supporting Actress. Like The Color Purple opening Christmas week, a big sweeping musical adaptation. This thing is going to get into all the precursor ceremonies and very likely the Oscars in many of the top categories, as long as it's not pushed for any reason like due to the strike. As long as it stays in 2023, The Color Purple is going to do very well. Same with Dune Chapter 2. As of this recording, I haven't heard anything. It's still coming out at the beginning of November. I am like so hopeful it does not get pushed. Do not push that thing until like summer 2024. Come on. Like we all want to see Dune Chapter 2. The first Dune was amazing, and this new installment looks even better. I'll be curious to see if it is a better film than Dune Part 1. Like, is it going to get into all the big categories? Does it have a chance in any of the acting categories? Can Denis Villeneuve get into Best Director this time? Like, we shall see, but I feel very, very, very confident it's going to do well at next year's Oscars, as long as it stays put. Napoleon is a question mark. Joaquin Phoenix, Ridley Scott, of course, those two did very well 23 years ago with Gladiator, and they're doing another historical epic. Ridley Scott just can't catch a break at the Oscars. I mean, he had two very high-profile dramas at the end of 2021, and neither really factored in at the Oscars at all. Is that going to be the case with Napoleon? I do feel like Joaquin Phoenix being the lead character helps. People really, really respect him, and he had a divisive but very interesting film, of course, earlier this year in Beau is Afraid. So unless Napoleon is just a bomb, if it's just not any good, I think Napoleon will do well at the Oscars. The new adaptation of Long Day's Journey into Night I'm excited for. Jessica Lange has not been in many movies in the last 20 years, but this project, this material, this will get Jessica Lange an Oscar nomination for Best Actress, probably. Like, if it comes out at the very end of the year, it builds up some steam, she gets a couple Best Actress nominations at the precursor ceremonies. Jessica Lange is very well respected. She has lots of Oscar nominations going back to the 80s, and she's won 2 prizes. I don't think she's been nominated since her win for Blue Sky in 1995. Like, it's been a while. What is that? Almost 30 years. So that would be really cool. Like, she's won some Emmys for American Horror Story and stuff. I am feeling pretty confident Long Day's Journey into Night, outside of the movie just not connecting. Like, I have a pretty good feeling Lang is going to do well next award season. And the last film I want to mention is All of Us Strangers, which is coming out at the very end of the year and probably is Paul Mescal's Oscar play for 2023. He has another film called Foe coming out in October, starring Saoirse Ronan, but that film is being categorized as a science fiction thriller, so I don't know if that's going to be an Oscar movie. All of Us Strangers, based on the still that came out, that cast, like, I am excited to see it, and it may just well be an Oscar contender. Now, there are, of course, I'm sure, many, many, many other titles I did not even mention in this video that might get Oscar nominations in the top 8 categories. I don't know every single movie that's coming out between now and December, but that's like a good chunk of the big contender movies that we're going to be talking about for the next few months. I don't know how everything is going to play out with the actor strike, writer strike, and if any of these films will get pushed into 2024. That's possible, be prepared. But I did, before festival season started, wanted to give my 2 cents as to the movies I'm kind of thinking about, looking forward to, and especially getting to see early at the Telluride Film Festival. So I'm not ready to give my early Oscar predictions for like all of the categories. I'm not really going to be prepared to do that until like October, November. I do want to see more of these titles. I talked about in this video, but just for fun, just for funsies, let me give you some very early Oscar predictions as of now in August of 2023 for Best Actor, Best Actress, and Best Picture. Alright, so my predictions as of this moment for Best Actor are Cillian Murphy, Oppenheimer, Bradley Cooper, Maestro, Leonardo DiCaprio, Killers of the Flower Moon, Paul Giamatti, The Holdovers, and Coleman Domingo, Rustin. My very early predictions for Best Actress right now are Fantasia Barrino, The Color Purple, Greta Lee, Past Lives, Carey Mulligan, Maestro, Jessica Lange, Long Day's Journey into Night, and Annette Bening, Nyad. And finally, my very early Oscar predictions for Best Picture are Oppenheimer, The Color Purple, Killers of the Flower Moon, Past Lives, The Holdovers, Dune Part 2, Barbie, Anatomy of a Fall, Air, and Maestro. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. And let me know in the comments below, what films do you think are going to get Oscar nominations early next year? Are there any films you think I left off the list? We'll see you next time at the Awards Contender.